Yes, folks, today's video is about the corruption at the CCP-UN Cabal. And this corruption is exposed by Hillel Neuer, the Executive Director of UN Watch. But first I want to talk about Todd Muller, the new leader of the New Zealand National Party, for a moment. Now, while the guy is better than Bridges and has a much better chance of beating Ardern, he is still wrong for this country. Now, when I first heard him speak, he sounded really good and really confident, and he seemed to have leadership qualities. And then I heard he had a MAGA hat, and I felt really quite positive about the guy. And then he completely lost me with this.
He's also keen for the border to be reopened.
I think it needs to be an absolute priority. Number one, Australia. Number two, in my view, China. It is an absolutely critical market.
No, Todd, it's not a critical market anymore. Not after they've deliberately destroyed Western economies around the world and killed thousands of people in the process. No, Todd, you're just another sellout globalist. And folks, look at who he surrounds himself with. Yeah, now Todd Muller himself seems conservative enough. Now, he didn't vote for that grotesque abortion up to birth bill, and I suspect he wouldn't have voted for gay marriage if he were in Parliament at the time. But look at the 12 people under him. We have Nikki Kay, a progressive lefty. She voted for abortion and gay marriage. Amy Adams, another progressive lefty. She voted for abortion and gay marriage. Judith Collins, exactly the same. Paul Goldsmith, another progressive lefty, he voted for gay marriage. Jerry Brownlee, a conservative, he didn't vote for either. Michael Woodhouse, exactly the same, he's good. Louise Upton, also very good. Now Mark Mitchell, a progressive lefty, yes, he voted for abortion and gay marriage. Scott Simpson, exactly the same. Now, Todd McClay is a conservative. He didn't vote for either. Chris Bishop voted for abortion, but wasn't around in Parliament, I don't think, at the time of gay marriage. And Paula Bennett, a progressive lefty, she voted for abortion and gay marriage. So, folks, out of that 12, 8 are progressive lefties. 8. And this is who Todd Muller surrounds himself with. Anyway, now to Hillel Neuer.
This coronavirus crisis has shown us that China has huge influence over the World Health Organization. Now, the WHO's last boss was in fact Chinese, and the current one has praised Chinese dictator Xi Jinping to the skies for his handling of the crisis, never mind how China first suppressed information.
The other important element is the political commitment and your personal leadership.
And it gets worse. The World Health Organization has 9 goodwill ambassadors, and they include Peng Liyuan, who the organization describes as a singer and an actress in China's army, a major general. What it does not add is that Peng is also the wife of the Chinese dictator. Another one.
So Xi Jinping's wife is a goodwill ambassador for the WHO. My God.
Of the 9 goodwill ambassadors is James Chow, who's British-born, but actually anchors the main evening news on China's state-owned China Central Television. And while he wouldn't dream of attacking China's dictator, Xi Jinping, or his wife, he does, of course, attack the United States.
At its core, and I think what the professor there indicated, is an institutional, a systemic, a structural racism in the healthcare system and in access to public services over there. You ask a black man to go out there with a mask in a country with a well-documented history of police violence, they want to keep themselves safe, but in fact you're putting them in danger by asking them to go out with a mask in the first place.
Joining me is the man who pointed all this out, Hillel Neuer, head of the Geneva-based lobby group UN Watch, which keeps a sceptical eye on the United Nations. Hillel, it's great to catch up with you again. Hey, is there any problem, in your view, with the World Health Organization appointing two such prominent apologists for China, including the dictator's own wife, as a goodwill ambassador?
I think there are any number of problems, and I'll just mention two. First thing is, this shows a culture of corruption.
You don't say.
At the World Health Organization. Look, in 2003, China got slammed, and it was trying to hide SARS outbreak, and it got slammed by the then director of the WHO. That's in 2003. A few years later, 2006, China's candidate, Mark Chan, suddenly takes over the World Health Organization. So now China's candidate, they're very proud that they put her in there. And then a couple years later, this Chinese candidate, Margaret Chan, who's now heading the WHO, suddenly names wife of the Chinese dictator as a goodwill ambassador. And then she names this Chinese TV propagandist, James Chow, as a goodwill ambassador. We see that when the current chief came in a couple of years ago, the first thing he did, and Tedros, he comes from Ethiopia, the first thing he did was name his neighbor and friend, the dictator now departed, Mugabe, of Zimbabwe, as a goodwill ambassador. So it shows.
Oh, yes, the Marxist mass murder of thousands of people and the guy who drove all the white farmers off their land becomes an ambassador for the WHO.
There's a culture of corruption that the dictatorships managed to, get these spots in there. And that's the first problem. The second problem, of course, is what they're doing with these positions. James Chow, to name one of them, he uses his WHO, his UN title, all the time. It's his main title, which is odd. He's a paid Chinese TV so-called journalist, yet his main title that he uses is a WHO UN Goodwill Ambassador, and he's been using it in the past 5 months, nonstop, Andrew, nonstop, on Twitter, YouTube, across social media, to put in serious propaganda for China, painting it as heroic. You showed one clip, but there's dozens more, as you know, painting China as heroic, and not a word of criticism for the fact that they harassed whistleblowers, made people disappear who dared to criticize China's handling of the pandemic. Anyone who spoke out about the pandemic, who tried to sound the alarm, was muzzled, was disappeared, was arrested, was shut down. And this guy, James Chow, who's supposed to represent the World Health Organization, couldn't find a single word to say about this, even though he's been talking about the subject for 5 months.
You're quite right. I looked up his Twitter feed, and he described himself as the World Health Organization Goodwill Ambassador. It doesn't say that it's actually a paid flunky of the Chinese dictatorship, but there you go. Now, let me play the devil's advocate, though, Hillel, because both of us are very sceptical, so I'm just going to, naively ask you this question. Both James Chow and Xi Jinping's wife, the Major General, have big followings on social media, so they would reach a lot of Chinese people. Now, isn't this a way that the World Health Organization can get out its message, and do some good in the world?
I think for the wife of the Chinese president, the dictator, perhaps an argument could be made that the World Health Organization is, co-opting her to spread the message of world health. Of course, we would have to ask whether perhaps the opposite has happened, whether in fact China has succeeded in co-opting the World Health Organization. And based on what we've seen, the repeated and lavish praise of the World Health Organization for China's so-called transparency and leadership in fighting the pandemic, when in fact they were shutting down anyone who tried to sound the alarm, when they were pressuring countries like Australia. I was actually in Australia when I saw you last, at the time when this was beginning, and they were trying to pressure Australia not to bar flights incoming from China, as they were doing in many other countries. So this.
Yes, the CCP tried to stop Australia and New Zealand from banning Chinese flights coming in. Yes, they wanted to infect us with this virus, and somehow Todd Muller thinks it's business as usual.
This is what China was doing, And so it seems that China, in fact, she's co-opted the the World Health Organization. But if we come to James Chow, what's interesting about him is, I could see the logic for having someone who's speaking in Chinese to reach 1 billion people and spread the message, but he actually speaks in English. James Chow is a British-born Cambridge graduate who sold his soul to the Chinese Communist Party. We don't know why he did it, but that's what he's done. And he's speaking in English. Once you talk about people speaking in English, there are thousands of personalities who have much larger followings and who are not propagandists who could reach large English-speaking audiences way above James Chow.
Hillel Neuer, that is a very good point, very good point. And I just think we really have to look very carefully at what on earth has happened with the World Health Organization. No, they're very good officials down below the food chain, but at the very top, something stinks to high heaven.
It sure does. And it doesn't get better, folks.
Look, China's authority and power seems to extend even beyond Taiwan and the World Health Organization and the UN, even to the European Union. They made the European Union dilute a report on its disinformation campaign to deflect the blame for the coronavirus outbreak. Yet they're on a UN panel that selects world human rights monitors. Do you think it's right that China does sit on this panel still? What is the point of these UN bodies if they never hold the superpowers to account, if they only hold some places to account, notably Israel, and we've spoken about that before. But when it comes to a really serious human rights abuse, they let them off the hook.
Look, that's absolutely right, Shari. Next month, the United Nations plans to resume its Human Rights Council sessions here in Geneva, and that was a session that was underway in March. They suspended the last week, and they plan to resume in June. And the first thing that they'll do is take up resolutions. There will be 0 resolutions on China. This is more than 1.3 billion people denied fundamental human rights. We have the virus where millions of people around the world have had their lives turned upside down. Tens of thousands have been killed. And it seems that China played a key role, certainly in hiding the outbreak of the virus, apparently being the source of the virus. And there'll be no effort here at the Human Rights Council to hold them to account. China has never been addressed in a single resolution, urgent session, commission of inquiry. And as you said, that's wrong. The Human Rights Council was founded to address human rights abuses around the world. And China is one of the world's gross and systematic abusers of human rights, affecting just their own population, 1/5 of the world's population, beyond what they've done now with the virus, their responsibility in infecting millions of people worldwide. And the problem is that the Human Rights Council is too often not about human rights, but about politics. You indicated that China has just joined in the past month a 5-nation panel that has the power to vet and interview and select world human rights monitors. In the next year, China will play a central role in appointing 17 different world human rights monitors, including...
Wow, rank hypocrisy, isn't it? One of the world's worst human rights abusers gets to pick human rights monitors.
The monitor on health, the monitor on free speech.
Yeah, the monitor on free speech. Well, the CCP gets to pick free speech monitors? Really?
On enforced disappearances. This is a country that has disappeared dissidents and people who are trying to sound the alarm about China's muzzling of whistleblowers with the coronavirus outbreak, as well as the experts on arbitrary detention. It's a country that may have up to 1 million people or more Muslims in camps in the western province of Xinjiang, the Uyghur Muslims. We estimate that over 1 million Muslims are in basically a kind of prison camps to try to remove their religion. So China's getting a free pass, and not only are they getting a free pass, but they're being put on critical panels at...
Yeah, wow, that is sick, folks. The communist new world order is taking us over as we speak. It's no longer a conspiracy theory anymore, it's real. And governments around the world are selling us out. We don't get heard anymore. We're supposed to be living in democracies, but we really aren't. Something has to change, folks, and it has to change quickly.